listening to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories, where we play tales to take you away from today. Do you know who Douglas Fairbanks is?
You're getting clever again.
Oops, my bad. I meant Douglas Fairbanks Jr.
That's better.
Well, you will after today's show. We also have an amazing story all the way from Scotland.
Amazing!
I know, it's amazing how far I will go to get you guys entertainment. Now, to prove that point, here is another 5-minute mystery.
Oh my gosh! Did you hear that? Oh god!
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by Douglas Fairbanks Jr., not the great actor from the silent pictures, the other guy. When you want something more recent, you have to go with Junior. After all, he was in the biggest hit ever with Gunga Din in 1939.
Safe should open easily. 2 turns right. Stop at 32. 3 turns left. Stop at 16.
Get away from that safe, Carter.
I was just checking on some tickets that I left in the safe tonight, Mr. Thompson.
Carter, you've been a cashier with this railroad for 15 years. How could you think of doing such a thing?
Oh, what are you talking about?
You've been gambling rather heavily these past few weeks, Carter. You decided to let the railroad recoup your losses. Well, stay where you are. I'm calling the police.
Oh, no, you're not.
Put down that bar, you fool.
All right, I'll put it down. Oh.
How are you feeling now, Carter?
A little better, Sergeant Evans. I can't see very well, of course. I broke my glasses in the struggle with the killer, and I'm not much good without them.
I hate to pour these questions at you when you're not up to par, Carter, but it's important that you help us immediately.
I'll do anything to help the police find the man who killed Mr. Thompson.
Good. Now, you say that you and Thompson came down here to prepare some ticket sales records for the railroad.
Yes.
About what time was that?
I should say about 9 o'clock.
About what time would you say the thief came in?
About an hour later. We heard the door open, and when we turned around from the safe, he was standing near the door, pointing a gun at us.
What happened then?
Well, he demanded we give him the money from the safe.
How did the struggle begin?
Mr. Thompson walked straight at the thief and dared him to shoot. He was warned to stop or he'd be killed, but he continued to go right at him. The thief lost his nerve or something, for as Mr. Thompson made a sudden lunge at him, he didn't shoot, but instead hit him sharply over the head with the butt of his pistol. I ran forward immediately and grappled with the thief. And he landed a blow in my jaw, and I fell to the floor. I got up as soon as I could, but I heard him starting his car outside the office.
Did you run outside?
Yes, the car was just pulling away, but I managed to get the first 5 numbers on the license plate. I wrote them down on this slip of paper.
Oh, yeah. This will be a big help in the evidence to be presented at court.
Well, I'll be happy to testify.
That's a wise idea, Mr. Carter. The murderer always should at his own trial.
What clue did Sergeant Evans uncover that led him to accuse the railroad cashier of murder? In just a moment, we'll know, but first...
Okay, let's review the facts of the case. We already know the guy did it because, well, we are the witnesses. But now, how did the policeman catch on? For me, it's pretty simple. It all comes down to broken glass again. That seems to happen a lot in these mysteries. I guess you can't commit a murder without breaking some glass. What do you say we go find out?
And now, back to our story.
Are you accusing me of murdering Mr. Thompson?
Yes, Carter. There was one slip in your story that gave you away. You admitted to me only a few minutes ago that you lost your glasses in the struggle with the thief, and that you were helpless without them. Yet you managed to run outside the building, and jot down several numbers of a license plate on a moving car in the middle of the night. No, Carter, there was no thief. But there was a murderer. Yourself.
See? Broken eyeglasses. How did the guy ever think that he was going to get away with it? It just goes to show that crime doesn't pay. This 5-minute mystery was brought to you by Douglas Fairbanks Jr., not the great actor from the silent pictures, the other guy. When you want something more recent, you have to go with Jr. After all, he was in the biggest hit ever, Gunga Din, in 1939.
That you say?
I have to say that the website transfer is complete and we have a brand new blog site. I have left my WordPress problems behind me and I can say for the first time it looks like clear sailing. There's nothing for you guys to do at all. All of the old links now point to the new links and vice versa. I want to publicly thank Libsyn for making this happen, and I hope that you guys enjoy the result. In addition to the new home website, I have moved the blog to WordPress.com. This site is still a work in progress, but it is ready for business. I encourage you to subscribe to the blog so that you can read my entertaining self there as well. This week we play True or False with Douglas Fairbanks Jr. To subscribe to the blog, go to ronsamazingstories.com and click on the Follow the Blog banner. Previous members of the blog will have to resubscribe. I want to thank you for all of your support. For our OTR story this week, we have one of America's earliest social media icons, Mr. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. In addition to his movie credits, he was a decorated naval officer of World War II. Even though the man was British, he was awarded the United States Navy Legion of Merit with Bronze V for valor. This for his planning of the diversion deception operation and his part in the amphibious assault on southern France. Now, as you listen to this story, take note of the praise heaped on him. It's quite obvious the respect he had for the actor. Our story is simply called The Exile and is an adventure set during the time of England's upheaval. It comes to us from the classic series Screen Directors Playhouse and first aired on July 23, 1949.
Screen Directors Guild assignment, production, The Exile. Director, Max Opels. Star, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. This is the Screen Directors Guild presentation of the adventurous legend, The Exile, starring Douglas Fairbanks and introducing the director of the film, Max Opels. The statement that art acknowledges no national boundaries is particularly true of the motion picture medium. Thus it is with a great deal of pleasure that the NBC Theater welcomes tonight a director who received his film education in Germany and France. In him is exemplified the rare combination of talents which are the starting point of the screen director's art. Among his American motion pictures are Letter from an Unknown Woman, the soon-to-be-released production Caught, and, of course, tonight's story, The Exile. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Max Opels.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very pleased and flattered that tonight the Screen Directors Guild presents The Exile, with Douglas Fairbanks Jr. in the screen role of Charles II and Jeanette Waldo as Kay. For many years I have had an idea about how history should be presented in the dramatic form, and The Exile is that idea come to life. For me, over centuries, parts of history take on the flavor of an old ballad, singing the deeds of brave men who lived in a kind of fairyland. But if such a quality is to be placed upon the screen, it requires a special sort of actor. He must possess a certain flair, a certain something I can call only Fairbanksism. Fairbanksism is a very vital substance in movie making, kind of glorious energy which escapes from most of us when we lose the dreams of childhood. Well, fortunately for this idea, Douglas Fairbanks came to me one day and he said,
Max, I want you to direct a picture for me. Listen, I'll tell you the story. The story begins on a stormy night in the year of our Lord, 1660. It's night, a storm with thunder and lightning, a slashing downpour of rain, and a horseman. A horseman fleeing across Holland in the middle of the 17th century. The fate not only of a nation is riding tonight, but of a way of life. A horseman riding the whole fugitive night. And the name of that horseman, Charles II, exiled King of England. In the bright morning, the exiled king is at his ease, pretending to sleep on the bank of a Dutch canal. Pretending to sleep because an enemy, a mounted man in a black cloak and a round hat, with ascetic, suspicious eyes, is riding slowly toward him. Stops without dismounting.
You, peasant.
Huh? Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Greetings in God's grace.
Greetings, greetings.
And have you seen aught of a man about 2 yards high with black hair and impudent manner?
Excuse me, but I am a stranger here, far from home, and enjoying the hospitality of these Netherlands.
English?
Indeed.
Far from home? For what reason?
My health.
God heal you, sir. And have you seen aught of the fugitive English King Charles Stuart, banished from England and hiding here?
What? That scoundrel among men, that lazy, self-indulgent wastrel of... Imagine England in the hands of a man like that, eh?
Not if Cromwell's men discover him. You have not seen him?
Is he about?
We found his horse wandering exhausted in the wood.
Knave, tyrant, tormentor of dumb beasts. Speed you on your search, sir. And may you and Charles II come face to face, one day not far off.
We shall. Farewell. Farewell. Health and a long life, countrymen.
My thanks, countrymen. My thanks. I must be on the move. But where? Where?
You there on the bank.
Oh. Ahoy, canal boat.
Can you help me? I can't keep this barge in midstream.
Keep it headed straight. I'll jump aboard from the bridge.
Well, hurry.
Plenty of time now, lass. Plenty of time. Now, steady as you go. Steady.
I'm trying.
All right. Now. Quick, hand me the pole.
Here.
Good.
Hold it against your shoulder.
I see.
And push.
I have it now.
Oh, that's so much better. Jan would have been furious if I had grounded his barge.
Jan? Who's Jan?
He owns the boat. He lets me use it if I haul his cargo.
Is he your master?
My cousin.
Healthy?
Very.
Muscular?
A huge man.
And he lets you do his heavy work, does he?
He owns the farm next to mine, and he owns the debts on my farm and my inn. 3,000 guilders I owe Jan.
You have a farm and an inn, eh?
Ever since my father died.
Tell me, this farm and inn of yours, is it close?
Not yet. I must anchor another night.
Good.
Why?
I find leisurely travel sometimes very soothing. And you need help with this barge in swollen waters, don't you?
Yes.
Good. Well, I come from a seafaring nation. Consider me your crew. how sweet the moonlight sleeps upon that bank. Here will we sit and let the sounds of music creep in our ears.
How pretty. What is it?
William Shakespeare, a poet who had his day, 50 years ago. Soon forgotten, but while he sang right beautifully.
Oh. Charles.
Hmm?
I was just trying the name.
Try it again.
Charles.
Again.
Wasn't that your English king named
Scottish king. Charles Stuart, and a Scot.
They say he was a most scandalous man.
A little rakish at times, but not too bad.
They say it is dangerous for an Englishman to side with the exiled king in these times.
Well, it's a little inconvenient at times, yes, but that is why I wonder, Mistress Katie, if I could hide with you for a while.
How?
Why, I could work on your farm and at the inn. I should ask nothing in return but shelter and board. Now tell me, how would you say, could you use an extra man in Dutch?
Kunt u een extra man gebruiken?
Kun you an extra man...
Gebruiken.
Well, could you?
Yes.
Good. Good.
How sweet the moonlight sleeps upon that bank. It is very lovely.
You are lovely.
Are you sure he will be soon forgotten, this Willem Shakespeare? If he says such true and lovely things?
For weeks, the exiled king works at Katie's farm and inn, willingly, even gladly, performing the most menial labor. Only his Cavalier friends in The Hague have been told of his new hideout. And now, one day again, history rides the Dutch lowlands.
Your Majesty! Your Majesty!
Hyde, old friend.
I have news from England.
Come. Hyde, you might have been followed here.
Aye, but the news warrants great risks.
Oh?
Your Majesty, General Monk has declared for us.
General Monk? On our side?
Even now, his army marches against the Roundheads. England is split into more factions than ever. And General Monk thinks the country would rally to your side if you returned now.
Returned? Now?
At once, Your Majesty.
I'm sorry, Hyde. No.
But with Monk on our side now, how can we fail?
I said no, Hyde.
These
No.
men are hungry. They yearn for home and family.
I know.
10 long years in exile,
I
Your
know
Majesty.
that, too. Bitterly enough.
Is this a time to show hesitation and fear and doubt?
Fear? Who speaks of fear? Great heaven, man, for 2 years after Cromwell killed the king, my father, I fought and met defeat, wasting the blood of men who trusted in me. And all because our hopes were false. False! I was told the 3 kingdoms would rise behind me to a man until I faced the enemy. And I was left alone with a handful of men. Brave men, but beaten beforehand and doomed in advance by false hopes. False hopes, false starts, false promises. And always the blood of free men uselessly forfeit. Now, I'll go home, Hyde, when I am freely called by all my countrymen. And not before.
The men are ready now. They call you leader, king.
King. What good's a king who's only king to some?
So be it, sire. There is other news, not quite so favorable. Colonel Ingram is in Holland.
Ingram? Here? That is evil news.
If there is one man in Christendom I fear above another, that man is the executioner Ingram. Oh.
Describe the man to me so I'll know him if we meet.
Think of the face and habit of death, and that is Ingram. His skin is parched and yellow like a dead man's. His lips are a straight white gash across his face, and his eyes burn with a light like grave worms in their bony sockets.
A consecrated man.
A fanatic, fearing nothing.
Naturally, what is death himself to fear?
Charles, if you will not return to England, then flee.
Flee Ingram? I think not, Hyde.
No, otherwise the cause is lost, Your Majesty.
Flee where? Holland is overrun with Cromwell's spies and swordsmen. Besides...
Charles, where are you?
Besides, I like it here, in spite of Ingram.
listening to the Screen Directors Guild production of The Exile, starring Douglas Fairbanks, and introducing the director of the film, Max Opels.
2 weeks more, 2 more weeks of idyllic pastoral life on Katie's farm. Then one afternoon, Charles is fishing in the canal, for if a cat may look at a king, then a king may look for a catfish. Unheard by him, a figure dressed in tarnished regal clothing moves up behind him, leading a moth-eaten horse.
Are you a Hollander?
Huh?
A Dutchman?
Huh? Oh, good day, sir, good day.
I'm told there is an inn hereabouts.
An excellent inn, my lord. I know, for I work there.
Ah, but you're English.
True.
What is your capacity at the inn?
I have been promoted to overseer.
Excellent. A fellow exile and an overseer. Tell me, what costs bed and board to a fellow countryman, you know?
2 guilders a night.
2 guilders. Suppose I tell you in all confidence, and that when I have spent the night at your inn, you may charge the next guest 20 guilders without protest, for you may tell him honestly, a king slept in this inn. Eh?
King? Which king?
Look at me. And though these English garments be the worse for hardship, and though my lineaments be weathered and war-beaten, say if you can that you do not recognize your king, Englishman.
Not Charles Stuart.
And the wandering, exiled Stuart. Yes.
Oh, sire.
Arise and lead me to your inn. You and your employer shall be rewarded handsomely someday.
Oh, come in, Charles. Did you finally get His Majesty, our guest, to sleep?
Finally, yes.
He is very indiscreet for a fugitive, Charles.
Very indiscreet.
Letting all those strangers in the tap room know who he is, but swearing us to secrecy.
I tell you, he'll bring Cromwell's Roundheads down on us looking for him.
Charles, he worries me. He told me he wants you with him when he invades England again.
Oh? And when may this be?
He said soon.
Uh-huh.
It's all so stupid and wasteful. There are far better things to do than quarrel over politics and kingdoms and all that rubbish.
We disagree there, Katie. England is a nation of some 7 million people who depend on their leaders. We owe them some sort of debt of...
Debt nonsense. You men will always find some excuse to start fighting and to be very proper about it. Debt indeed. Now, I have a debt, a real one that you can count and that means something to plain people. 3,000 guilders.
I know.
I gave you a job and shelter when you wanted it, and now you plan to leave me for that beerhead.
If my king calls me, Katie,
You will desert me?
I will follow my call.
Then I will not need your services any longer, Charles.
I'm dismissed?
Yes.
Now?
I will not spend my time and my money teaching you farming and management of an inn and see it all go to waste over politics. It is best you leave before...
Before what?
Before I come to depend on you too much.
I understand. I'll leave in the morning. Good night, Mistress Katie.
Come in, please.
Ingram.
The face and the habit of death, and that is Ingram. Like a dead man's, his mouth a straight white gash across his face. And that is Ingram.
Ingram?
Do you work at this inn?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
I've seen you before. Somewhere.
It may be.
Tell me plainly, of which party are you?
Party?
The parliamentary party?
You mean the Roundheads?
Do you call them so?
Candidly, sir, if I ever see my home again, I shall belong to no party. I have recently renounced politics.
Then perhaps I can trust a man without any convictions.
I suppose that depends on the trust.
I am looking for a man whose face I have not seen in many years. Rumor places him hereabout. His name is Charles Stuart.
You refer to the king?
We call him Charles Stuart.
What? Who down there takes the name of his sovereign, Charles II of England?
The fool, the pompous idiot.
And what is this? A despised Roundhead in the royal presence? Bare your head. Bare your head, I say.
I remove my hat only in the presence of God and in the presence of death.
Sire, this gentleman here is looking for an uncrowned king. The gentleman's name is Ingram.
The executioner?
Your servant, sire.
I'll retire to my room.
Wait.
I'm tired.
You shall sleep soundly.
Oh, no.
Draw your sword.
No. Please, I'm not really the king. I'm not the king. I'm an actor. Dick Pinner. Pinner's my name.
Draw your sword.
But I'm just an actor. A poor, out-of-work actor. Believe me, please, believe me.
Enough, Ingram. The jest is over.
What jest?
Oh, can't you tell a knave from a king? Look at me, Ingram. Look at me. Spare this craven fool clowning for his keep and look at me. Surely you know a Stuart when you see one. Look at me.
To be sure. Stuart. To be sure.
Pinner, slide me your sword, quick. Thanks. Now, see how it is to deal with an armed Stuart for a change.
Charles Stuart, I charge you to surrender. You are trapped, Stuart. My men surround the inn.
In my service at this inn, I learned a famous recipe for rabbit pie. It goes like this. First, catch the rabbit. And keep a firm grip on your sword. Remember it, Ingram. Long live the king!
Robbins, Thurlow, all of you!
Colonel Ingram?
After him, men, dead or alive!
Oh,
Wait here, Robbins.
who are you? What is the meaning of this?
You are the mistress of this inn.
What if I am?
Where is he?
Who?
The Englishman who works here.
If you mean Charles, my retainer.
Where is he?
What right have you to invade a Dutch house and hound a hard-working man to death because he is loyal to his king?
Don't play the fool with me. He is the king.
Charles? The king?
It's plain you're innocent in that matter. But mind you, don't shield the man if you would remain innocent in the matter.
What now, Colonel Ingram?
It's plain from her manner that Stuart's more than handyman to her. Watch her. She'll lead us to him.
Katie, you shouldn't have come here. They'll not admit to search around this windmill.
Charles, that man with the face like a skull, he told me who you are.
Then let me tell you in a few moments what I wanted to spend my life telling you. I love you, Katie. Above all things, deeply and gratefully.
Gratefully? Why?
Because in your love, I've found a few precious moments of shelter. I've learned from you another life than fear and flight and battlefields and parliaments. If I should die, remember that I loved you. Not as King Charles, doubtful monarch of a restless realm, but as Charles, master of his own soul.
Charles, look, they're coming.
I knew it. Quick, inside the mill. Here. Against this wall. Hide. Behind these sacks.
Robbins, guard the door. Thurlow around the back. I'll meet the Stuart single-handed.
He's coming in alone.
God be with you, Charles.
Charles Stuart. Stuart, how will you die?
I give you this chance to face me alone, for I would relish killing you with my own blade. Stuart!
I am here. Defend yourself, killer.
Rejoice, O England. Thy deliverance is at hand.
Oh, well spoken, sir. You write your own epitaph.
We'll finish this alone, you and I.
You'll die for that vanity.
I'll live for my beliefs.
And I for mine. Back, Inquisitor. What? You give ground to a Stuart? Back, I say, back!
Rusty.
Rust, Ingram, is the color of old blood. Your crimes are upon you, killer. Back! Up the stairs!
Blasphemer!
Back!
Heretic!
Back, I say, up!
Ungodly Stuart!
Why? Because I think God made men free?
Die!
Another time, Ingram. Not just now.
Die! You must die if England is to live.
Rot. England will live no matter what happens to either of us. On guard.
Killer!
Charles?
It's over, Katie.
Thank heaven. Charles, listen. Outside.
Trouble. And surely Roundheads do not make trouble for other Roundheads.
Your Majesty! Your Majesty!
Hide! How? What?
Are you all right?
Yes, I'm all right.
Oh, thank God you're safe. I bring great news, great news.
Oh?
A new free parliament has, on behalf of all the people and all beliefs, asked you to return to England as their king.
No. They accept my terms. Religious freedom for all and all the rest.
Everything.
Oh. Will you leave me alone with Katie for a moment?
Your Majesty.
Katie.
I know, Charles.
What shall I do?
What your heart tells you, Your Majesty.
Charles, no, Charles.
Your Majesty. You are my Charles, but you're their king. And they are so many, and I am one.
But if that one is all...
Your people are hurt. There are many wounds for you to tend.
But what will happen to you?
I will have many things to do. I'm going to plant more tulips in the west field bordering the road, and my inn will be famous now. And I shall pay my debts.
Katie.
And my memories will be my greatest fortune.
And mine. And all these memories I'll put like rose leaves in a box. And I shall love you always, beyond measure, beyond proof, beyond battle and the folly of nations, beyond life, where we shall meet again.
Charles, England is at the door.
Coming. Goodbye, Katie. One kiss.
To last forever.
Coming. Coming.
Gentlemen, the king.
And I shall love you always, beyond measure, beyond proof, beyond battle and the folly of nations, beyond life, where we shall meet again.
The NBC Theater has presented the Screen Directors Guild production of The Exile, starring Douglas Fairbanks, with Janet Waldo, and introducing the director of the film, Max Opels. Next week, the NBC Theater brings you the world-famous screen director Alfred Hitchcock, introducing the delightful comedy Mr. and Mrs. Smith, with Robert Montgomery in the starring role. And now, here again are tonight's stars, Douglas Fairbanks and Janet Waldo, and screen director Max Opels.
Doug, this has been the way you told me the story?
Yes, and you said you'd direct the picture.
It must have been quite an experience for two such talented artists as yourselves to work together.
Yes, there's one of Mr. Fairbanks' accomplishments I shall never forget.
His acting?
Sure, and his practical jokes.
Why, Max, how can you say such a thing?
Well, one day I had a birthday and they bring me such a beautiful cake on the set. But when I tried to cut it, a disaster.
Why?
It was made out of wood. Very embarrassing. But when Doc brought out a real cake, then we had a nice party.
Well, you see, we really loved you after all, Max.
So nice. And, but for your practical jokes, I forgave you when I saw your latest picture, The Fighting O'Flynn.
Did you like it, Max? I'm very glad. It's to be released next month, you know.
Yeah, I liked it very much. Miss Waldo, it's about a dashing, romantic Irishman who does the most amazing things you have ever seen just to win the lady he loves.
It sounds wonderful. Mr. Fairbanks, I understand that besides starring in The Fighting O'Flynn, you also wrote it and produced it.
Well, yes, that's right. But I hope you enjoy it too, Janet. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Max.
Good night.
And good night to you, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., Janet Waldo, and Max Opels. Tonight's cast included Raymond Burr, Carl Harbord, Paul McVeigh, Joe Grandy, and Lou Krugman. The Exile was adapted for radio by Milton Geiger, and original music was composed and conducted by Henry Russell. Production was under the supervision of Howard Wiley, your announcer, Frank Barton. The Exile was presented through the courtesy of the Fairbanks Company and of Universal International Pictures, now releasing Crisscross, starring Burt Lancaster, Yvonne DiCarlo, and Dan Duryea. Listen again next week when the NBC Theater presents
Screen Directors Guild Assignment. Production, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Director, Alfred Hitchcock. Star, Robert Montgomery.
This is NBC, the national broadcasting company.
Wasn't the quality of that recording just amazing? The story, while wonderfully adventurous, does have a shred of truth to it. The film and radio version was produced, written by, and starred Douglas Fairbanks Jr. The story, however, is based on the novel His Majesty the King, a romantic love chase of the 17th century by Cosmo Hamilton. Pretty much a mouthful, and it roughly follows the happenings of King Charles, the unhappy prince, while he was exiled for about 24 hours. No one can ever know what Charles really did, where he really was, or who he was really with. But Hamilton has written a story about that missing day and night. Now Douglas, he took it a bit further and made an epic film from about 24 hours. How about that?
As read by. Amazing stories read by amazing people.
This time on As Read By, we have an amazing story sent in by Rebecca Maitland. Rebecca hails from Inverness, which is a city in the Scottish Highlands. Its name literally means mouth of the River Ness. The River Ness flows from the northern end of Loch Ness, which we all know is the reputed home of Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster. How about that? Rebecca has written a story she says is true and adds, Krathman he klus, but truth gangs nicht. Now, I don't know what that means, but I'm pretty sure I just butchered the Gaelic language. Here is her story, as read by me. I love a good ghost story. My mother was fond of reading them to us just before bedtime. Some might think this an odd practice, but she always told us that, A ghost can never harm ye if you trust in God. Which we did. So we looked forward to story time every night. One of the stories she told us many times, and it always rang true with each telling. After I'd all grown up, I asked Mom about the story, and she told me it is true. It took place below the mountain en route for the Loch Ness. Here is my mom's tale. I tell it as she did to me more times than I could count the sheep in the hills. A young girl and her brother were walking along an old rover's trail on the North Mountain bits. They had done so many times, and each time they always felt like they were being watched. The trail was never the same because with each rain the stream would jump its bank and more often than not would settle back into a new path. So the two were searching for a good place to cross. They came across the vestige of a smiling young girl, dressed in a blue-green watery outfit, sitting on a slab of rock amidst the fast-moving water. She was pointing to the water, enticing the walkers to cross. The older looked to her brother and then to the stream. The flow of the stream was much too strong and surely would have pulled them away. They tried to talk to the little girl, yell really, to help her. She spoke not a word and seemed totally unconcerned about her plight. The two had no choice and continued on the banks of the stream, leaving the thing waving and pointing at the river. They walked for some time, but finally found a safe place to cross. As quickly as they could, the two ran back to the stone and found it empty. The girl was gone. Fearing for the child, they looked around but found no sight of her. Giving up, they continued their walk home. As part of the trip home, they had to pass through a narrow valley called Pole Ghost, or in English, Ghost Hole. They had been warned to always stay on the path when passing through. As long as you did, the fairy could not take you. About halfway through, the siblings looked on top of the hill, and there stood the little girl waving at them, beckoning. Both brother and sister felt the pole so much and wanted to go to the spirit, their heads filled with images of candies and cakes and Irish creams. The boy started to run up the grassy knoll. His sister quickly tackled him, thankful for the times that the two had wrestled together, and dragged him back to the path. "You stay here, wee one. Will not be a fairy's dinner this day." She shook her brother until she could see the light in his eyes again. They both walked the whole of the valley, not looking up for the rest of the trip through the Pole Ghost. As they came out the other side, the girl was there again. This time she pointed to the east. A place called Corrisk Coinin, or in English, Rabbit's Marsh. This one was easy for the two because they'd been told by their father to never go there alone. Their fear of their father was greater than the pull of this ghost. The girl yelled, "May the cat eat you, and the devil eat the cat." And with that, the girl beast faded and was gone. The sister looked at her brother, and they both agreed that they'd had quite enough for that day and ran all the rest of the way home to tell their mother what had happened. I don't know if my mother was the girl in this story. Neither she nor my uncle will ever say for sure. They both do, however, seem to share a smile each time the subject is broached. I will say that I've always felt that there is truth in every story told. It has always been a tradition in Scotland to tell stories to your children, the idea being that you can better teach with stories than you can with lectures. Thank you for allowing me to share my story, and I hope the RAS listeners enjoy it. Rebecca Macklin. I love that story, Rebecca. I don't care if it's true or not, you are a fantastic storyteller. No doubt an artifact of your upbringing. I did do a bit of research on this, and I found this Googling the search of paranormal stories from Scotland. this one made me go, huh. In May of 2011, Ben Adler was hiking below a mountain en route for Loch Ossian. He was following an old drover track while looking for a suitable spot to cross a stream. Sound familiar? He noticed the image of a smiling young girl sitting on a slag of rock. She was pointing to the river, enticing him to cross. Ben panicked and moved further downstream, crossing at a point where the water was calmer. He never caught sight of the girl again. Coincidence or confirmation? I'm going to leave that for you to decide, but consider what Rebecca said. There is truth in every story told. To Rebecca, I say thank you so much for your story. To the listeners, I say send me your stories. I'll read them right here, or you can read them yourselves. All you got to do is send an email to ronsamazingstories@gmail.com, and you too can share. You know you want to. Just do it.
From the studios of WOL in the nation's capital, the Coast to Coast Mutual Network presents Fulton Lewis Jr.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There's fast and dramatic news from Europe tonight. Tense news that makes your spine tingle and your heart stop cold. That reassurance we enjoyed last night following Chancellor Hitler's speech at Nuremberg is gone today. It's gone as completely as if his words had never been spoken. Yesterday, you remember, Mr. Hitler said he wants peace. He wants to settle Germany's difficulty with Czechoslovakia in a friendly way. He merely demands that the several million Germans who are living in the Sudeten territory, the western edge of Czechoslovakia, be protected and guaranteed their full rights. This morning, the cable wires were smoking with flash news. The president of Czechoslovakia declared martial law in that Sudeten territory. Military police took over the cities. According to the cable dispatches, there were tanks in the streets, and the law of the army went into effect. When that news reached Berlin, it was like the sputtering fire reaching the end of a fuse. There was an explosion. Chancellor Hitler flashed back an ultimatum to Czechoslovakia. It said that Germany will not stand for this martial law in the Sudeten territory. It demanded that Czechoslovakia revoke that order and revoke it within 6 hours. And the implication was that if the ultimatum is ignored, Germany is ready to act. And all that has very ugly similarity to the days of 1914, when Austria was sending ultimatums to Little Serbia. And it's not necessary for me to say that the world is upside down tonight. The cable dispatches from Europe say that American tourists are scurrying for the nearest seaport and catching the first ships they can for home. Every cabinet in Europe is in emergency session behind locked doors tonight. Here in Washington, the State Department has been in turmoil. Secretary Hull naturally has declined to make any official comment, but I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that there's grave worry in his eyes. He's ready to spend the entire evening and the entire night at his desk. The whole building is ablaze with lights, and those lights, most of them, will be blazing still in the wee small hours tomorrow morning. Out in Rochester, Minnesota, where the president is waiting to see his oldest son, James Roosevelt, safely out of the woods after this stomach operation, Mr. Roosevelt was in almost continuous telephone communication with the State Department. As fast as the confidential dispatches would flash in from the American embassies and legations in Europe, they'd be decoded here at the State Department and relayed quickly to the president. And so the world seems to teeter on the brink. Tomorrow seems to depend on a mere touch one way or the other. Now, as to little Czechoslovakia, her cabinet is meeting also tonight. The deadline for this ultimatum is just a few minutes off now. And here in Washington, the Czechoslovakian legation is awaiting very eagerly the latest word from the government at home. A little while ago, I thought of stopping by there to find out what the acting minister, the Chargé d'Affaires, Dr. Breshka, has to say. I thought it might be interesting to get a few quotes from him to pass along to you. But as it happens, we've worked out a much better arrangement. Instead of merely telling you what he says, I've asked him to come here to the studios. I've asked him to let me ask a few questions, my own questions, right here at the microphone, so that you can listen in and hear his answers for yourself firsthand. Now, Dr. Breshka, this whole crisis today hinges, of course, on this order that was issued by your government this morning, this order declaring martial law in the Sudeten territory. That's the reason for this present crisis, of course. Why was martial law declared this morning?
The Czechoslovak government was, of course, always determined to maintain order within the republic, but recent incidents were of such a nature that normal means of preserving order in some of the Sudeten German districts were not sufficient. In order to prevent possible clashes in the various districts, the government decided to impose martial law.
I see. Your position is that Mr. Hitler even yesterday demanded that the Sudeten Germans be protected. Germany said that there was disorder and that these Sudeten Germans were being persecuted. And you say that this was a move by your government to guarantee order just as he requested. Now, is there anything of value to Germany in this Sudeten territory? Are there any gun factories, any mines? What sort of territory is it?
Yes, the so-called Sudeten German section of Bohemia, which never belonged to Germany but was always a part of the lands of the Bohemian crown, is very rich in natural resources, namely coal, kaolin, and ores. In the western part of Bohemia, we have the world-famous spas, Karlovy Vary or Karlsbad, Marianske Lázně or Marienbad, and so forth. Because of the natural resources, these districts are highly developed industrially.
Then this Sudeten territory is of value. Very well. Apparently, Germany wants this territory, Dr. Breska. It looks as though Mr. Hitler considers this in very much the same status as he considered Austria. Suppose we finally reach the situation where Czechoslovakia has to give up the Sudeten territory to Germany or actually fight to defend it. What then? Will Czechoslovakia fight or give it up peacefully?
Never. The Czechoslovak Republic would not voluntarily sacrifice any part of its territory.
Do you think, Dr. Breska, that your country is strong enough to defend this territory? Have you a strong army? Do you have the men, the guns, the materials?
Yes. Czechoslovakia is prepared to defend her territory. The army is equipped with modern arms, and the firm determination of the people to defend their country compensates for what may be lacking in numerical strength. The soldiers know that they would be defending a just cause.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Dr. Breska, for giving us all this little interview. It was very kind of you to come, and we certainly thank you very much.
I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. I think it was a fun one. Our story from Scotland this week was fantastic. I want to thank Rebecca for sending it in. Jason and I have started to work on the next Horror Express, and on next week's show, we will have a suspense story that will truly keep you guessing. If you want to keep up with what's happening on Ron's Amazing Stories, please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or sign up for the weekly newsletter. All the links you'll need and access to the blog can be found at ronsamazingstories.com. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.